What are kind of 2-3 truths about global scaling that most people usually get wrong?
Global scaling is first to have the same vision, purpose, strategy around the world. This is one of the mistakes that people do when they scale globally, is to take the brand so local that there is no scale anymore.
And then you move from one iconic global brand, YouTube and Google, to the next, to IKEA. A lot of people don't know, initially IKEA was really against selling online, right?
All transformations, it's actually not the technology and it's not the data. It's people fearing being irrelevant. It's people feeling that there is a loss of identity. The most important thing for me is to have impact bigger than making money.
Hello and welcome to the Icons Show. Today with a very special guest, Martin Coppola, who I feel lived in one life the lives of multiple people. You've been one of the highest ranking female leaders at Samsung in Korea. You've been with Google, and you'll tell a bit more about what you did there, but running the product marketing at YouTube, amongst other things. You've been, chief digital officer at IKEA at a time when IKEA didn't want to be digital, and you forced them to be digital, and you'll talk about that success later on, and a CEO of Decathlon, amongst other things. So, Barbara, thanks for being on the show. And why so many different roles in so many different geographies with so many different industries?
Okay, thank you so much for hosting me here. It's actually a pleasure to be here. It's a good question. For me, it's a bit of a philosophy of life to, live in different places and different adventures out of curiosity, out of wanting to know how different people live in different places in the world, how different cultures in companies, get people to behave. And so I've been really lucky to have all these opportunities and to give my all in all of them, actually. So that's the leaning in a bit and living a full life philosophy for me.
Okay, cool. And I think in the pre-conversation we talked about how your initial experience as a child from early life, music, engineering, moving countries, shaped kind of your curiosity for the world. There's also obviously a lot of executives, but most of them are also parents, listening in. So. And they're asking themselves, how can I make sure that my kid is also as curious about the world? So what experiences shaped you early on that made you kind of discover so many different things, you feel?
Yeah, so I grew up in Madrid, in Spain, and I had a very stable upbringing. So we didn't move places when I was small, but my mother is French and my father is Spanish. Also, my mother used to be a teacher in an international school, and she always shared different stories about different people, different students from all over the world. And that already is, something that awakens a curiosity to say, how do we live in Kenya? How do we live in Japan? And always respecting actually the differences. I also come from a bit of an immigration family. So my mother comes from a Sicilian family, immigrated to Tunisia, then immigrated to France, that then went to Spain and met my father, who himself moved from the north of Spain to Madrid. And so there's been movement in the history of my father and my mother, which actually opens up also possibilities in my mind. The second thing is I was brought up with trying a lot of different things, a lot of sport and a lot of music, while at the same time, always the number one thing was to study and to be serious at school. So there was always these two things, right? Have fun and develop yourself, with more than school. But school is number one, and you should be serious of that. That was also, giving a mosaic of different things to discover oneself through different lenses. And that also, I think, is important also now for my kids, as I'm raising them to be adults.
Interesting. And I think let's start maybe with your first, I would say probably even the most controversial decision to move to Korea as a woman to work with Samsung. How did this come about? And what were the things you learned there along the way? Maybe you can walk us through that journey.
Yes. So I had just completed an MBA from INSEAD. And we had previous experience with my partner back then, now my husband, who, we wanted to come back to Asia and actually have a full experience, at an Asian company. And so we found, he found a job and I found a job in South Korea. I started working for Samsung in the global marketing operations department. And in that department, there were only 2 white persons in the whole department. Everybody was Korean. And I had the amazing opportunity to work for the first woman VP ever at Samsung Electronics, Hyun Lee. That was her name. And so I lived a unique experience.
And Samsung by then was already a big global company, right?
It was a big global company. But see, for instance, Samsung was number 2 after LG in the TV space. Samsung had done a huge movement in terms of like brand and had like global sponsorships and was a very known brand, but was maybe considered a little bit upscale for young people. So that was back then another one to say, how can we become cool for young people again? It was a fantastic moment to be there, not only to learn from, a global brand such as Samsung, but also to learn as a person in terms of leadership and in terms of, cultures, how to lead effectively in a place like Korea, which is so different than, leading in the US, for instance. And so, training that muscle of adaptability was an incredible gift back then.
So what were some of the lessons there or the universal truth that you learned, for instance, in Korean, company culture that you then adapted to, let's say, your next role at Google/YouTube, because those 2 cultures couldn't be probably further apart from each other, right?
Yes, indeed. So, for instance, Samsung had, and I would say Korea as a whole, an extremely, group orientation culture. So when the group had decided something, people would actually go and execute. And I think they are some of the best in the world at executing that I've seen in my life. The group orientation is something that I really value. The fact of, once we all kind of debate and all of that, or someone takes a decision, then we go for it. I've taken that with me to other places to say, okay, can we somehow decide as a team what is important to us? And then once we have agreed something, we all go for it. I think it's something that is really important. I also learned a lot about the unverbal communication. So the things that are said without words, how people behave, from their physical, communication perspective, and how you influence with, things that are not speaking. And it has so much importance. And that I learned there because I couldn't understand half of the Korean that was spoken. And so I could observe a whole lot more. And I could see the power movements, and I could see the people that were influencing a lot, even without having the position. And so I was imitating, wow, this person is really moving the room. How is she or he doing? And so learning from that and incorporating a lot of the things that I know are incredibly important to influence beyond titles and beyond positions. So that I took with me as well in other places. And you said universal truths, across companies, across cultures, overall people want to belong. They want to have an impact, and they want to feel good with what they are bringing to the world in terms of being useful. And so that I found to be true everywhere, from Korea to Google to any place, that I've worked. People want respect, they want to feel good, and they want to belong. And so that is, I think, important to keep in mind.
Okay. And you said something interesting about this group orientation, right? So Asian cultures are really about consensus. Whereas, nowadays, especially in Silicon Valley, but also in Europe, it's more about, strong leader decision making type of role models. How does this group orientation work out in practice? Maybe you can give kind of one or two specific examples here.
Yes. Well, the first thing is in Europe, you have also cultures such as the Swedish one that is consensus based. And so somehow you need to understand, how decisions are made in different cultures so that, you move effectively people, right? For instance, at IKEA, people voice their opinion one by one, and they are really respectful with that, which I love, because then, you hear out all the perspectives around the room. That is something that, by the way, I've taken everywhere I go. But then you want to come up to a decision. And that decision is the one then that you need to respect once, the team has come up to a decision. So whether it is a strong decision from the top, a consensus decision, or, some other form of decision, the important thing is that there is no detractors after that. And that everybody, even if you disagreed initially, will not be resisting the decision, because the paralysis happens with the silent resistance. When someone is not convinced and somehow will not play the rules of, the decision has been taken, therefore everybody's moving in the same direction. And I think it's important to actually feel out when things are not happening. Why is it not happening, or why is it not happening as effectively? And there is a whole lot of nonverbal in there that is important to understand. I think most effective teams, they know each other well, and they actually can disagree and can hear each other. But at the same time, once the decision has been taken, they all move forward together. And I think it's important to hang in there. If things are not happening, is most likely something that is a human condition or something, not the decision itself rationally. So it's going below the layers to understand what is happening humanly.
And obviously, I think that is probably easier said than done, right? So how do you kind of get those people that disagree committed to executing full speed on something that they don't believe in, basically, or where they said, hey, I want to go into a different direction?
Well, I'll give you the example at IKEA, for instance. You could feel in the meeting maybe that some people disagreed, or they would plainly say it, I disagree. Then things happened outside of the meeting. So you will have a coffee, it's called fika. You would have a fika with one and with the other, and you would actually humanly agree or negotiate that this was going to happen. The other way is to also have tests. You do small tests that prove the point. So you could do it with a portion of the team and say, hey, are you open to seeing by yourself that this is actually working? You do it, you prove the point, and then, it's the evidence that wins, right? It's almost like the majority would take the laggers or the ones that are not that are resisting still. And then the final thing is you can do so much convincing, so you try through, testing, through conversations, through fika, through this, through that. If at some point it doesn't work, then there is a problem with the person or in between. And so that's another conversation, right?
From all of the companies that you've been involved with, is there some sort of company culture or operating system that you would feel generates superior results versus others?
Yes, it's the cultures that allow people to have ideas in a safe way and that enable people to actually implement those ideas and make proof points out of those ideas. Now, that combined with a sense of direction, a vision, a purpose that is clear. The issue with allowing people to be entrepreneurs is that it can be so fragmented that it's actually inefficient and it doesn't work. You want to have an individual empowerment and at the same time, a collective sense of organization to go in the same direction. It's not easy to do. And at the same time, is essential because 100,000 people innovating is so much better than a team of innovation innovating, right? And so you want to enable those who want to actually do it, but have a sense of organization to have that energy go in the sense of the strategy that you set up at the same time.
Okay, so let's shift gears and move to your time at Google, and where you also spent a lot of time on actually distributing and launching YouTube, right? So YouTube is a global brand, but obviously there's been some or a lot of local elements to kind of get local relevance. There's been also a lot of national players in that segment, especially in the beginning. So how is it for you to adopt to that type of tech culture? And how did you kind of launch a playbook to ensure that you win local markets without diluting kind of the global brand?
It's a great question, and I'll give you a concrete example. So I worked in France for Google, and then I worked in Mountain View. So YouTube was in San Bruno, specifically in California, right?
Yeah.
Which is the headquarters for YouTube. So in France, we would actually get YouTube to be adopted by creating content that was extremely local. We created, for instance, a contest of creators, and we made an offline launch where people would actually show their creations. And it was in French and it was local people. Now they do that in the platform that is very much, the unique central platform for YouTube globally, right? In France, for instance, back then, the news were very much taken by Dailymotion, while, entertainment was very much open. And so YouTube very much took the angle of actually going into the entertainment space in France in its different components to win the adoption little by little, and then eventually got into news as well. So it was about creating that growth and growth and growth with a local understanding of what French people wanted to see. Now, if you go to San Bruno, then you're sitting on a global platform and you have ways to actually make it global and impactful everywhere. So what do? For instance, when you acquire customers and you would acquire customers through the YouTube app, this is one campaign that can actually be, very much used everywhere in the world. And this is a mass game because you work on media in order to download the app as much as you can. So you have actually very much things that work globally, and you have a localization, in terms of content at the local level. When you are able to orchestrate both, that's when you win. And that play is really important to get right, because if you are too central and global, then people won't recognize that this is their YouTube locally. If you are too local, you are not having the scale that you can have to win versus other competitors that are not global. So it's really important to get it right.
So that's a really nice transition to my next question. What are kind of 2-3 truths about global scaling that most people usually get wrong?
Global scaling is first to have the same vision, purpose, strategy around the world. So it's really important to have people buy into what are we trying to do collectively everywhere in the world. That means also that there is one brand, and the one brand can be played locally, but the brand should be recognizable everywhere in the world. This is one of the mistakes that people do when they scale globally, is to take the brand so local that there is no scale anymore. And to say, no, but my country is special. So I know exactly what I need to do with the brand in order to resonate. No, it's the right mix of brand everywhere recognizable and, play with it locally to make it special. The second thing is, that sort of like balance I was talking about between central teams and local teams. This can only be found, by the company itself. And it's all about a history of people. So do you give a lot of power locally, or do you give a lot of power centrally? And the thing is that you need to design that for yourself. But both need to exist. All local models are completely fragmented. They don't work. All central models are ineffective and they get local people disempowered. So that balance and carefully designing who does what is really, really important. The third thing is speed. If you, get that organization right, then you are unstoppable because you have the power of global things, combined and at the service of local kind of last mile, if you want. Now, I've seen oftentimes this becomes into bureaucracy when local and central teams cannot agree, fight each other, and they actually are not able to move with speed. And therefore, this is the opportunity for startups that move fast and actually come in and are able to meaningfully connect with people so much faster and so much more relevant than big corporations and sort of massive players, right? So the nimbleness and doing that when you are big is not easy at all. And many lose it and become bureaucratic, and that's the end. So how to actually do that in an effective way? It requires a lot of energy, and it also requires to change the organization oftentimes. What worked in the first 2 years is not what will work in the 5 next, nor in the next 10. And having the modesty and also the connectivity to the market to understand it's time to change, and having people be okay with that change is really important.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube really benefits a lot from the network effect, right? So you have more videos, you have more viewers, you have more kind of creators uploading again. So were there unique hacks that you figured out on the marketing, on the growth, on the virality side to kind of incentivize those loops? What were some of the things that you discovered in that role that really cracked, so to say, the code of scaling globally there in terms of virality?
Well, a couple of things. So at the beginning, YouTube understood that staying closed in their own environment was not the right thing. So there was a team actually opening up YouTube to anybody. So putting links of YouTube in different partnerships, in any place where you could consume YouTube. There was an easy way to download the player and to use it for a lot of different usages. And that was like an incredible advantage because, versus, if you will, more closed environments that you need to get people to come to your site in order to and have, that acquisition of clients that is so expensive. So distributing out was a genius play, actually, at the time, for YouTube. the openness versus closeness, really worked for YouTube. And then it's actually letting people speak for you. I remember that was like a very important sentence back then, not only at YouTube, but at Google. So it wasn't YouTube saying, hey, look at me, how cool I am. It was users saying, hey, this is amazing, and making the platform be their platform and actually be their advocates. And YouTube was just there to say, okay, what is right, what is wrong, and helping actually those voices come out. And this is really important because there is a certain trust into the community. So building the community was really important, and they would they would do their movement. They would do actually the revolution socially that was happening through YouTube. And that was really cool to see, is putting yourself more as the enabler instead of the leading sort of face of it. And incredible things happened. And when things happened is highlighting them in the platform, right? So through algorithms, when you see things are emerging, you can tag them, you can put them into relevance, and through the product and external communication, make more people actually discover that. So, yeah.
Amazing. So, and then you moved from one iconic global brand, YouTube and Google, to the next, to IKEA. What a lot of people don't know, or probably forgot, that initially IKEA was really against selling online, right? So they said, it's not going to make money. And then you kind of decided to go there as a chief digital officer. It could have been probably a career graveyard, right? So many other people tried. Like, why did you feel that this is a challenge and an uphill battle that you want to go into? And how did you kind of generate results and success there? Because you'll tell the numbers, but IKEA does do a significant amount of revenues now online, right?
Absolutely. So the first thing is, I've always been a user of IKEA, and it's a dear brand to me. I started my life with IKEA, building the
same as a student.
Yes.
It's a lot of pain,
and
but it was
it's
fun. The results are good.
You do it yourself, and so you're attached to this thing that you created. I've always loved the humanity of the brand and what I felt. And I deeply, deeply love the democratization of well-being at home. So I thought this was actually meaningful. I then went to meet the CEO back then, Jesper Brodin, still CEO today, fantastic human being. And he was very much wanting a digital revolution. So
and maybe can you share why they at this point in time decided to do digital? Because there's been a lot of resistance, and I think at certain points they kind of rejected it. So what was the tipping point?
Well, they were saying that they were being left out, simply, and that the numbers and the growth was very much coming online. That didn't mean that they would actually abandon the core of IKEA, which is the store, but they knew that they needed very much to complement and to keep going with this revolution, because it was going to be with them or without them. So the market was, very much moving there. And so they were convinced. What they didn't know is how. And so that's where I came in. By the way, I joined for the purpose and also for the CEO, who was special to me. And then I came after, so many years in pure digital. And to be honest, at the beginning, it was a bit of okay, how do we do this? I had never been chief digital officer before. To me, digital was like air. You just breathe it and it happens, I was coming from those environments. But then it wasn't the case at IKEA. And so at the same time, it was a bit of, okay, let's build it then. Let's build a tech company within IKEA. Let's build a digital company, starting with product people, digital people, and data people, technology people, UX people. I knew how things worked in the sort of Silicon Valley companies. So we started building that from scratch. IKEA was very much of an IT organization back then. And so huge reorganization, upskilling people to work in a different way, as you would know in other places, right? And then we started hiring people as well from outside. really great people that had done digital transformations that were coming from pure players, from Spotify to Target to Best Buy and they all came because there were values that were beautiful. They all came because we were expressing a brand that was dear to us and because we were doing a movement that was good for humanity. That's what we thought. And so we did the hard work of actually reinventing all digital and getting that growth going, completely redesigning the touch points from the app online to the apps. We invented things from an innovation perspective through, AI spatial devices and also an app that was called Geomagical Labs, where you can actually scan your room and then see, how the furniture fits in it. So we really went from the basics all the way to innovation. And there was such a sense of momentum and building, even if at the beginning it was like impossible. IT, cost management, not the mentality that you wanted. And little by little, that momentum actually was there. And so a lot of issues at the same time. It wasn't all rosy, for sure not. But we made it, together with people from outside and inside working together as well.
And just to get a bit of kind of dimension for scale, like what's the revenue of IKEA these days? What percentage approximately is digital?
When I was there, it was around 42 billion euros overall, and e-com was around 12 billion.
Wow! So I mean that easily puts you in the top 10 of global e-retailers, right? Which is very impressive. And what's the amount of time that you had for this whole transformation, like from when you started to getting those results?
So I stayed 4 years at IKEA, and
Wow.
And to be honest, like the big sort of hockey stick, because it was a hockey stick, happened in about 2 years. At the beginning, people didn't know what product management was, right? So that was the level. And little by little, actually, changing the organization, complementing with people that had different skills, and then I remember I launched the first challenge to the teams that was, we're going to redo the app of IKEA completely. And we're going to do it in 6 months. And people came and they said, it's impossible. We don't have the technology. We don't have the people. We've never worked together. We cannot do it. Why not? Why not? No, but this problem, that problem, whatever. How do you solve it? What do you do? And I was meeting them every week. And it's incredible because we started as it's impossible. And then little by little, people understood that it wasn't okay to come with a problem without a solution. And so little by little, they started finding solutions. They started, and the momentum happened. But it was difficult at the beginning. And we made it. We made it in 6 months. And you don't believe like how much pride, energy, and overall good feeling that was, that they proved to themselves that they were able to do this.
Yeah. I mean, there must be some leadership secrets there, because there's so many stories of old school brands that want to digitalize and they cannot sync and integrate those two cultures of digital and old retail. There's fights about who owns which part of the P&L. So walk us through kind of some of the challenges that you maybe expected, but maybe also some of the unexpected challenges of turning this around.
It's a great question, because now, it's my third transformation now, and I can talk actually, recognizing the patterns. But in all transformations, it's actually not the technology and it's not the data. It's really people. It's people fearing being irrelevant. It's people feeling that there is a loss of identity. So this is IKEA. This is my home. I've been here for 25 years and you're changing my identity. It's a huge issue. Loss of power. The power is in the shops, in the retail shops. And then suddenly all the growth comes online. That's a shift. And so this is really the deep reasons why transformations don't work. And so the incredible thing that I think IKEA was good at is to get it all out. I was calling those like therapy sessions. Seriously, people sitting around in chairs and talking about their issues, their fears, and why things were scary. And you don't know how incredible and powerful that is, because it moves people into, okay, you get it all out. And then the issues start to be a lot smaller just by speaking about them. And also getting people to realize how you're making other people feel. So it's really, really important. And I would tell you, of course, and you have heard this in other places, I'm sure, quick turnarounds and proving the point quicker. Making sure that you partner with the early adopters at the beginning that help you prove the point, so that the majority that is in the middle that doesn't know whether this is okay or not, they need a proof point. They will come towards the energy at some point. There would always be people that are detractors. And the question is, what do you do with them? Do you go and convince them and spend the time to convince them? Or do you get the majority and the early adopters fast? And then they decide whether they come or not. So all of that is like really important things.
So, I mean, if a lot of it from your philosophy boils down to getting people into a room, opening up, listening, and then kind of, even if they disagree, have them all commit. So is it fair to say that you're not a big fan of remote work?
Oh, we worked all COVID remotely. We were super effective. So my CFO was in India back then for IKEA. She was one of the closest persons to me that I've ever had, Divya Kumar. So I can work remote and I can work together. When people are remote, the room will be a virtual one. But you do things like that. Now, it's important to see each other in person for sure from time to time. And I think that people that are together in terms of a team physically, it goes a lot quicker because you can read the room, you can have a coffee, so that's for sure. But it doesn't mean that you cannot work in a remote way. So it's really up to you and how you work on that. But you need to sync very oftentimes to make sure that you all go in the same direction and that you are all connected as human beings.
Yeah. One other thing about IKEA that I feel is the magic and the uniqueness is, the whole experience in the stores, right? So you go in, there's like probably a masterclass of how you navigate people through different rooms. I mean, you can take some shortcuts, but usually, it's been copied so many times, this concept of that IKEA wants you to kind of experience all those different rooms. And then you have the hot dogs at the end, you have kind of the kids' playgrounds. So that's all not possible online, obviously, right? So how did you make sure that you create still something that's on brand and consistent with the brand and the uniqueness in a digital world with IKEA? Like, there must have been probably a lot of interesting discussions on how to bring iconic offline brands to the online world.
Yes, and the important starting point is to understand that you do not replicate the offline world online. Online is a whole new game. And so in here, you do want the feeling of the brand to be present online, but the rules of engagement are just completely different. And so, for instance, online, what you want is to find an answer quick. And some people will come and get inspired, as you do in the store and all of that. But some other people just want to find the stuff that they were coming to look for and give it to me quickly. So what you need to do is to understand the intention of people coming to your site. And you do that through understanding the people, personalization, through the signals that this person gives you coming and from where he or she is coming. And so then you serve quickly, what this person is looking at. So it's really important actually not to replicate the offline world. It's super important though in the design, in the way things are expressed in the site, to still have the feeling that this is IKEA. How do you do that? Well, you have actually from, very much of the brand definition, but then how do you decline it digitally is the work that we did with my team and expert designers. And you need to feel the brand and then little by little come to express it digitally. And then you try and you see what works online. So you have an overall look and feel, even the buttons, the way you talk, the way you actually do the selection to the detail, everything needs to be tested. And so that's where you get the conversion too. Changing one sentence would actually do plus 30% conversion. And that's the test and learn that you need to do all the time.
And is there certain unique elements that you feel are special for the IKEA online brand now that are part of the new IKEA online DNA?
Yes, you find the same sort of palette of colors, for instance, and that's really important, right? But then there's a whole actually universe of digital expression. If you go, you will see it. How the buttons have a round shape around them. How the whole long list of furniture types is now personalized. So depending on who you are, we serve you, different furnitures, in the selection. You need to have a nary, wide, simple space, which is part of the DNA of IKEA. So not too much whistles and bells, but staying straight, in a white space, kind of simplicity of Scandinavian design, if I can say it that way. The price is important, because it's part of the DNA of being affordable. And having actually the special promotion in a certain colors, which is exactly the same color as how it is offline. And so it's really all these little things, but also the pictures, which are so important. So how do you express yourself digitally, as an IKEA brand? And having that look and feel actually, the people you use, how you use them, when you have people, when you have only the furniture, the lighting, and all of that creates actually a feel that at the end is something that you go and just, you feel it. And then you test it out and see what works and doesn't. The tone of the voice, the tone of the sentences. It's simple, it's straight to the point, it's humble. Never commanding, never, too many details. So all of that, right? So I would encourage you to test it out.
I will. So then your most recent transition was from, IKEA to the CEO of Decathlon. And Decathlon, for those that don't know, is probably one of the biggest sports retailers in the world, selling under their own brand. What excited you about this? And, all of those roles, it requires so much energy. So how did you get the energy to kind of then say, okay, I'm going to go for another transformation, basically? What was the purpose behind that?
It's a great question. So what excited me was that I had grown up in Spain going to Decathlon to do sport and get my gear. I grew up doing a lot of sport when I was small, and my father is like a crazy sports person, and my sister and I did a lot of sport. Decathlon is doing a bit similar to IKEA, is democratizing sport. Mm-hmm. And I think people live better lives if they do movement and they do sport. So the mission called me to help out this company be better so that many more people around the world could actually have healthier lives. That was the reason why I joined. I was the first woman ever in that company and the whole constellation of the family businesses that the Melier people have. And I thought about it actually quite a bit. Because as you can imagine, being different is not always easy. But at the same time, the mission was so beautiful. And I met people within the company. I thought, there was something special about them, that it was almost like the mission was stronger than almost the business. And I thought it was like a beautiful thing. So I joined, and I was very happy that I did, because we did indeed quite a bit of a change and a transformation, which I think would actually be super important for Decathlon now and moving forward.
Yeah. It was your first role really as a CEO. Was that different from the other leadership roles?
Yes, because you have so many more stakeholders. So the stakeholders multiply. You have different people within the company. You have, the board. Then you have the wider family, it's a family business. You have the press. You have government. So it's a lot of different stakeholders. The other thing as well is that you have 100,000 people looking at you. And so somehow being a bit the center of attention to everything and everywhere is something that you need to process as well. Being sort of like the people look up to, and small gestures or ways of being or whatever, people look and they interpret, and so it's being conscious about that, and being mindful without losing yourself. So there is a risk of actually just playing a part and being somehow not authentic anymore. But how do you combine being authentic with, at the same time, and connecting with people authentically, while at the same time being mindful of the position that you have and that the impact you can have? And getting that balance right is something that I think is a path to learn.
Yeah. It's such an interesting observation, because of course, even if you're Chief Digital Officer, CMO, yes, you have a lot of responsibility within the organization. But as you correctly said, now as a CEO, you have a lot of more, attention from a lot of other people. So that multiplies. How did you stay sane? How did you make sure that you stayed focused, that you didn't get too stressed, that your mental health was in order?
Yes. Well, one coach of mine gave me an advice, which was develop your emotional support outside of the company. So I have my family, very, very dear to me. My 2 kids and my husband work together, in a very strong way. This was essential for me to stay myself and stay sane. My friends that are not related to Decathlon, really important as a support base. And I then made sport every day. So even if it was 10 minutes, sometimes I could afford an hour. I lived the true Decathlon spirit, in the sense that I was very much practicing every day. And that is such a powerful tool. And then the last thing, meditation. Meditation to ground yourself and come back to your essence. Who I am really, and ground myself. So all of that, plus trying to eat well, was essential.
Amazing. A lot of good advice. I mean, you said initially that before in our conversation that you also were contemplating going into the non-profit sector and, and maybe doing something else with purpose, but then made a conscious decision to stay kind of in the for-profit world. What makes work feel meaningful to you? And, how do you make sure that you have kind of purpose in what you do?
The most important thing for me is to have impact bigger than making money. Impact on people, impact on the societies at large and the planet. That gives me energy to actually do the hard work, for instance, of transforming companies. I need to believe that the activities are building better for my kids, leaving a legacy behind that would give a little bit in the story of humanity in the positive way. I think purpose is one of the most important ingredients, not only for big positions, but for anybody. What is your North Star? Why do you wake up in life? And how do you choose to spend your time in your life? Purpose is a light that helps. And so I've been selecting actually places to work where I feel that, and where the people, have also a tendency to be wanting to provide something more than just the growth of the company. And don't get me wrong, the companies need to make money, need to grow, need to be healthy financially so that they have impact. So what companies have this superpower is that there is a self-regulatory sort of mechanism where you need to be fit as a company in order to give. And somehow I think it's a healthy system to auto-govern yourself. If not, you're not competitive and the market would eliminate you at any point. And so there is something in there that is quite ruthless and at the same time is healthy, because, you are bound, right, to govern yourself and make good use of the people and of the budgets that you have. I did spend time in the NGOs in my career. I was trying to find actually meaning in the sense of helping people. And I went into the NGOs and a foundation early in life. I think I decided that I would, somehow go into the private space because the impact that I found I could have back then through, companies was bigger, better, faster, through companies. Now, down, my life, most likely I would hopefully give back and operate through NGOs and foundations at some point. I have a lot of respect for them, and I think they do a lot of good as well.
Mm. I mean, it's such an interesting, observation that you do around, purpose and needing to have profit and a healthy company to kind of have that impact. There are, of course, probably times where there's tension between, profit, purpose, stakeholder incentives don't 100% align. So how do you usually navigate this tension? If there's decision A that you need to make to kind of generate maybe shareholder return, and decision B that would be maybe better aligning with the overall impact, for instance?
I think it's really important to have the purpose and the vision has to be agreed with the board. And this is something that you cannot do on your own, with the teams. The ecosystem needs to be behind the vision and the purpose that you set up. If done well, this is so authentic and so authentic to the values of the company that it gives energy to help with the growth and the sort of financial part. So it's almost like a yin and a yang. It's the heart and the brain. You want them to work together, and the purpose is your heart. And so I believe it reinforces each other. Now, it is true that there are moments of crisis when inflation is too high, there is a war in Ukraine, there is transport issues all over the world. And then there is the moments of truth, as I call them, when you need to align your stakeholders around what is priority and how do you move forward in a way that is true to your values and at the same time can handle with the situation and the difficulties at hand. And so it's about prioritizing without forgetting actually the important things. So it means certain things can be delayed or done a little bit later. It doesn't mean that you erase them from your strategy and from who you are, right? And I think that not giving up the values is the most important in these times, because then you would lose your people. You would lose the employees that are here and engaged around the vision and the values. So it's really important to actually almost reinforce that purpose during difficult times and not the contrary.
The other thing that I really love about one of the things that you said is you always made sure to have this balance. You said, family is important, employees are important. And you also left office always quite, on time at 5 p.m. How was that kind of perceived within the organization, maybe short term and then also in the long term? Because I'm sure that it was probably an inspiration to some, but maybe others were like, especially maybe in Korea or, the board CEOs were like, oh, what is she doing? Walk us through that.
Yes. So the story here is that to be an effective leader for me, I identified my family to be a non-negotiable. And so I Googled, I became a mother. First, my first one was born in Paris, and then my baby girl was born in California. And I simply was completely miserable if I didn't see them every day. Yeah. And so I had to actually leave early, because if not, they would be asleep when I come home. And I remember I got remarks from people saying, oh, are you taking your afternoon off? Because I was rushing in the subway to see my boy, But at the same time, almost it was like, if I don't do that, I just cannot live with myself. I need this to be a good leader too. So I decided that I would do it anyway. And it took a bit of courage, because you see people but what actually was okay was that Google was very much performance oriented. So I had my numbers, I exceeded them, and I was actually working after my kids were asleep. So I was just putting my working hours in a way that it was okay for me to be a mom, but also to be this high performer person that I am. And so that was a win-win at the end of the day. So I was happier. When people are happy, they give more, and they also are more loyal to the company. And so at the end, it actually, because I was the first one there, it helped other women there. Because some sacrifice incredible time and incredible years because of the performance and because of the perception that they need to adapt to the status quo, which I don't think is true. And so more and more, and I think there's been quite a movement there, to allow women, men to have their time for their happy things, whatever it is in life, I think makes people much better at what they do. And they also come with less stress, more happiness, and it's good for the company to have happy employees. So that's that. And the final thing is, I remember talking to my chairman, the one who hired me actually at Decathlon, and asking, hey, sometimes all the time, I leave early to see my kids, actually. Is that okay for you? And his answer was, why wouldn't it be okay for you? I mean, do whatever is good for you. I mean, needs to be good performance for the company. I'm like, great. This is a good company for me. So
I love that. And, it's always a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to have balance. But I also love how kind of it needs to come from the leadership, right? Because, you need to pave the way and be the inspiration for a lot of other people. So Barbara, it's been amazing. Can we do last close rapid fire questions? So one sentence question, one sentence answer. That's something we love to do on the show. Okay. What's a question you wish people asked you more often?
What would you say to young generations that, they have hope and that they fight for what is right? That would be, I think, an important question as we are in a bit of a crisis mode right now.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received and from whom?
Be yourself. Adapting to the environment doesn't mean that you lose your values and your core. And by being yourself, you will be stronger. That is an advice that I got from many different women leaders that were struggling being different in the corporate life. At any company that I've been, from Samsung to Google to IKEA.
Okay. And what would you tell your younger self before her first global leadership role?
Breathe. It's gonna be okay. You are enough.
Amazing closing words, very inspirational. It's been a really big honor to have you on the show, and can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for hosting me here. Thank you.